Hey everyone, it's Daniel Elwood and Robert Johnson, the Last Snyders, and the Last Snyders are part of the Launchpad Media, where we're always launching new ideas in your direction. Check it out at thelaunchpadmedia.com. You'll find our show and a bunch of other shows, including Johnny Rocket Launchpad's new version called Blast Off with Johnny Rocket, as well as Postcards from Somalia, Sounds Like Liberty, and The Law with DK Williams, among others. So check it out, thelaunchpadmedia.com. Tonight, we're going to be talking about Harold and Kumar Go to White Castle with our guest, who is from Cannabis Heals Me. I'll introduce her in a moment, but this is episode 75 of the show, and show notes more at lessnerd.com/75. Give us likes, subscribes, reviews, and all that stuff, and that'll help us get a higher profile and more recommendations out to other listeners so we can get some more earballs. Isn't that right, Robert?
That is exactly right, Daniel. Thanks for spreading the word, everybody. If you like the show, check us out. Give us the like, subscribe, rate us, talk about us. Word of mouth is fantastic. You probably have libertarian friends, enemies, all kinds of people.
Frenemies. Frenemies.
Yeah.
It's like a mashup, mashup. And also give likes and subscribes to our guest show. Our guest is Rachel Kennerly. She's a CPA, a homeschool mom, and a podcast host of the Cannabis Heals Me podcast. You can find her show at cannabishealsme.com. How are you doing, Rachel? Tell everyone not only how you're doing, but a brief, like what's your show about and how can they engage with you?
No, I'm totally blanking. No, the Cannabis Heals Me podcast, what we do is we talk to people who have used cannabis medically, and we share just kind of their journey to cannabis and kind of what their condition was, what life was like before cannabis, what life is like now after cannabis. And we would just want to share those stories so that people can share those stories with people who are either, on the fence about cannabis prohibition or are dyed in the wool prohibitionist. So that's kind of our gateway into cannabis. And then on our Thursday shows, those are Mondays, our healing stories. And then on Thursday shows, we kind of say, well, what are some other issues related to cannabis? It's not just about medical. It's about, what is government trying to do, or what can we take from the cannabis issue and apply it to other areas of our life?
Right. And we touched on a fair amount of that in our pre-show related to the drug war and basically carte blanche for the government and agents of the state to do whatever they wish regarding our persons and property. So that sounds like a very interesting show, and I recommend it to people. I've actually listened to a couple of episodes, and I think you're doing a great job. You're about, 40 episodes in now?
Yeah, I think 42 just came out this past yesterday. We actually talked. I'm a Christian, and so that was kind of something that I grew up always knowing, I guess, being told that cannabis was immoral, and it's immoral because it was illegal. So Jason Rink, who is a Ron Paul biographer and worked for the Ron Paul campaign, and he's a producer. He produced a movie on nullification for the 10th Amendment Center. He came on and we talked about Christianity and cannabis. So how do we resolve those two? Because a lot of people who are Christians have always heard that cannabis is immoral because it's illegal. So we talked about that issue. And I found it an interesting conversation. I don't know if atheists would find it all that interesting, but I did.
Well, I'm interested, and I happen to be an atheist, so I will check that out. And actually, we had a really good episode on Easter about Passion of the Christ with the anarcho-Christian, and we were talking about legality versus lawful. Like, just because it's the law doesn't mean that it's moral or righteous, and you can find so many contradictory laws anyway. So, like, you would never be able to actually be lawful in all cases or legal in all cases. But anyway, we should probably get into our movie, because otherwise, we'll just talk like this all night.
That's right. And that's not why people came.
That's right. Yeah, we don't do important work like you do. We talk about movies. But
well, this is important too, guys.
Well, it is a lot of fun. And Robert and I were talking about this stuff anyway. So, NSA hits record, we hit record. So it works out. All right. So we're going to start with the Google description. We're talking about Harold and Kumar Go to White Castle. Came out in 2004. It's an adventure/stoner film. That is one of the categories on the Google, apparently. 1 hour, 28 minutes, 7.1 IMDb, 74% Rotten Tomatoes, and 64% Metacritic. However, 90% of Google users like it. And I think I would qualify as liking it as well. Spoiler alert, everyone. And here is the description. Nerdy accountant Harold, played by John Cho, and his irrepressible friend Kumar, played by Cal Penn, get stoned watching television and find themselves utterly bewitched by a commercial for White Castle. Convinced there must be one nearby, and the two set out on a late-night odyssey that takes them deep into New Jersey. Somehow the boys manage to run afoul of rednecks, cops, and even a car-stealing Neil Patrick Harris and PH before getting anywhere near their beloved Sliders. The release date was July 30th, 2004. The director, Danny Liner, and it had a budget of $9 million, but made almost $24 million. I'll go to Robert for his initial reaction.
Yeah, so Rachel, am I correct in understanding that this movie was your choice?
I'm going to go with negative.
Oh, really? This was a Daniel selection in lieu of your speciality?
Well, yes.
I remember it differently, a little differently.
I have never seen Harold and Kumar go to White Castle.
Okay, because I was wondering, you after watching the film and then you telling me what you do, I was thinking, well, maybe there's a movie that deals more with the medical marijuana issue. And because I didn't really see a whole lot of that in this film.
No, and there's not. I don't recall seeing any medical use.
Yeah, not so much the medical use. I mean, they seem to be having a good time.
That's right.
Which you could argue, I suppose, depression is a medical condition.
Yes.
But yeah, I don't know. Does anybody know if there is a medical marijuana movie?
There is one called Weed the People, is one of the ones that came out. Ricky Lake, and I can't remember the other lady's name that did it. It's really good too, though. But it's probably not quite as much fun to watch as Harold and Kumar go to White Castle.
Oh man,
there are no rabid squirrels in that movie. Oh, rabid raccoons
or cheetahs.
No cheetahs either.
Yeah, my kids love cheetahs, by the way. But I just want to throw in there that there is an instance of medical marijuana usage in this, or an intention to, and that is when Kumar is performing the bullet surgery, trying to get the 3 bullets out of the gunshot victim, and he says, we're going to sedate him with marijuana as much as you can get. And then Deadpool says, well, we don't have any marijuana here.
I forgot about that part.
So there is that one tiny linkage to the topic at hand and her speciality. Now, I do want to also say that she did recommend a different movie initially, and I think I would have had to pay like $15 for it. So I think tongue-in-cheek, I brought up Harold and Kumar. She's like, well, I haven't seen it. And then you saw it, and you're like, yeah, let's do that one. So I'm going to kind of throw it as a push on who suggested this one.
I was trying to save you $15.
Thank you. She saved me a dime bag, Robert.
Thank you, Rachel. That's fantastic. Or, sorry, what was your name?
It's Rachel. You got it.
Okay, good. I didn't want to make sure I got it right. All right.
All
okay,
right.
So where do we want to start with this one?
Well, let's go with I think where you were headed with this, and I'll direct this to you, Rachel. With legalization in a few states so far, and kind of this growing push for it, and I know you've probably discussed this in your show, and it appears to be gaining traction and potentially overturning the law in the whole country. And in your past, you viewed marijuana as a gateway drug, as you said, and that the government had the moral right to prohibit or make it illegal. And how effective that can ever actually be is another matter.
Right.
But does a movie like Harold and Kumar or Cheech and Chong or whatever help or damage the reputation of cannabis? Because on the one hand, it's making it more popular and lighthearted in a comedy film, helping to normalize it, making it, kind of like more fun and friendly or whatever. But on the other hand, it trivializes it as well, making it seem like it's just for fun or getting high or acting stupid. So what do you think? Like, does a movie like this hurt or help in that regard?
I don't know that it's going to help, but it does. It kind of does make it more kind of part of the vernacular where it's like, it's okay. And these guys, they're not psychotic and they're not going out and killing everyone. They're just having a good time and not doing any violent, because that's the propaganda, is that it turns you into a violent person. And, obviously Harold and Kumar are not. They just want hamburgers. They're less violent than the guy that freaks out in the drive-through line because the White Castle closed.
Patrice.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would have to answer that question by saying I think it depends on whether you're in the target age range or not for the film. I think if you're a young person watching this movie, I think it helps to normalize it. And, you don't see it as a bad thing anyway, probably at your age, at that age, as much as maybe you would if you were some kind of stodgy 40-year-old or something.
Like me.
But then, yeah, if you are some stodgy 40-year-old and you see it as well, look at these dumb people doing dumb things and look how it makes you do dumb, stupid stuff. Yeah, I think it's a little bit of both, probably. Dan.
Yeah, a bit of a mix. But I think, how they say politics follows culture? I think that was a Breitbart thing.
Yeah.
If you get the kids while they're young,
right,
and get them liking this kind of a thing,
then 20 years later.
Yeah, 20 years later, you've got legal cannabis.
Legal cannabis in all kinds of states. So who's had more of an impact on your life, Harold and Kumar or can't think of another example.
Well, this is a very powerful film, apparently. A tour de force, and it's a comedy de force, I think. I found myself laughing pretty consistently in this one, but also troubled by how problematic it was in so many respects. It's one of those movies I don't know if they could make it today. I'm wondering why the Twitterati haven't gone after John Cho and Cal Penn about this movie that they made, 15 years ago now, with how un-PC it is. I love it. I love that stuff. I hate PC stuff, but this was hilarious.
Do you think they can get away with it because they're not white guys?
It doesn't hurt.
You mean black people? You mean people of color? You mean
I don't know what I'm supposed to say today.
No, I was playing off on the Fred Willard character.
Oh yeah. I forgot about Fred. He's hilarious.
The hemoglobin hemoglobin trotters. Is that what you said? Anyway, this is it's a ridiculous movie,
yes.
But it's also kind of intelligent in a way. Like they're not dummies, and they talk about some kind of, I don't know, almost intellectual stuff. In fact, Cal is he's super smart, or at least the character. He's aced the MCATs. He's got all sorts of like high-minded literature on his bookshelf, including The Grand Chessboard by Zbigniew Brzezinski, which is kind of interesting that's thrown in there. And then,
Wait, which character are we talking about? Harold or Kumar?
Kumar.
Okay.
And then Harold, the John Cho character, who my first interaction with him or first exposure to him was when he talked about that chick's a MILF in American Pie. So he'll forever be the MILF
guy.
The MILF.
I like it.
But he's the Asian guy and he loves math, so he probably made his weekend.
Yeah, I like the fact that even though they're stoners, they're not sit on the couch. I guess their friends are kind of sit on the couch stoners, but these guys are, Harold's got a job and Kumar is super smart, so they don't fit the typical stoner categories when you just look at them on the outside.
Although Kumar, I would say, is definitely not like striving to succeed, even though he has all the credentials and all the ability. But that's not necessarily due to his love of weed. I mean, maybe it has some part of it, but he also just seems to be kind of not being super interested in being a doctor at this moment.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's another thing. Like when you're 21, 22 years old, like how many people really know what they want to do? It's like people just go to college because that's like the next thing. And it's just, in a way, it keeps you still infantilized, like you don't have to grow up just yet. You can kind of stay in that cozy, safe space, and it's become ever more safe. So safe that you can't even have any any opinions of your own or be exposed to any new ideas.
Yeah, and if anybody's saying anything that runs counter to that, then we shout them down or we throw things at them.
Right, because words are violence now, apparently.
It's extreme, bro. Learn how to drive. This is America.
I did appreciate the 90s frat extreme boys. That I had forgotten a little bit about the 90s, but yeah, they brought it back for me.
Did you have a hang glider?
I don't remember actually having a hang glider myself.
Oh, you know what?
I appreciate that they have one on their truck just for, just in case, right?
Just for extreme emergencies.
Right.
No, actually, Robert, I don't know if you recall, but one of our friends in high school had a motorized hang glider thing. I don't know if you
in high school?
Yeah.
I did not know that.
Our buddy with the horse farm.
With the what?
With the horse farm. The big field.
Really?
We'd go mudding around in that old, what was it, a Datsun B210? Like the field car. We'd take it off.
Yeah.
Sweet jumps.
You never went up in no hang glider.
No, I never went up in it, but
or ultralight or whatever you want to call it.
I think he had one, and I don't know if he ever got it running. But
okay, that doesn't quite count, does it?
Well, you could imagine what it would have been like, Robert.
I could get super stoned and imagine what it would be like.
All right, so I want to bring up another thing because you talked about how the impression of marijuana or cannabis, and my wife actually told me that the term marijuana has racial implications or origins because it was to make it the devil's lettuce. And they have a poster of The Devil's Harvest, which is a movie from 1942 about how marijuana or cannabis is so bad and evil. And they have a PSA in the movie.
I saw that.
Where these two kids, one of them takes a puff for the first time ever, and he's like, "Oh, I'm so high," and he grabs a gun and shoots himself.
That was a real thing in the movie?
Yes. At 10 minutes and 25 seconds.
Oh, you have a note on this. All right.
I do. Well, the history of, because cannabis was actually on the U.S. Pharmacopoeia from 1850 to 1942. And so Harry Anslinger, when he was out of job, when alcohol prohibition was no more, no government bureaucrats go away. Their jobs always stay, and they shifted gears and started going after cannabis. But because cannabis had all these medicinal benefits and was in the pharmacopoeia, they had to call it this scary thing, marijuana, that the Mexicans used, that all the crazy Mexicans and jazz singers used. So when they talked about how scary marijuana was, they just use fear like they do with everything else. This is the most important election of our time, so you have to vote now, otherwise blah, blah, blah. So it's just fear mongering by politicians and bureaucrats, and the war on drugs was no exception to that.
Yeah. Sometimes things never seem to change, right? Like it's their modus operandi.
Yeah. I mean, and I know y'all aren't Christians, but in the Bible, it talks a lot about, just do not be afraid, do not be afraid. And so I always think, because that's what politicians try to use to control us. Well, how do we get them to give up more control of their lives? Well, we make them scared. We make them scared of terrorists. We make them scared of the crazy Mexicans and their marijuana. And so fear is a powerful motivator.
Absolutely, it is. You're 100% about right about that. And it seems to keep working over and over and over again, because people seem to fall for it all the time, as if politicians have ever done anything to engender trust. But apparently the propaganda continues and people fall for it.
Every couple of years they fall for it again, and then the politician does the exact opposite of what they said they were going to do.
Yep.
And somehow people haven't caught on to this. I don't understand why. It's like a recency bias. Like, well, they said this, and then you forget it, right? And then they do something different, and no one seems to ever call them on it. But
I mean, I know my friend, the Obama apologist, likes to say that, well, Obama was just a really good guy, and he wanted to shut down Guantanamo, and he wanted to end the wars in Afghanistan and Iraq, but those damn Republicans just wouldn't work with him. And, he's just a really good guy, but he can only do so much, right? Even though he's the freaking commander-in-chief of the military, and that's pretty much one of the things you actually can do, is tell the military what to do.
Yeah, no matter who you vote for, you get John McCain.
Bringing out the Woods-isms.
I had the opportunity to go see a Ted Cruz rally when he was running against Beto, and it was just the most predictable tripe. And I'm like, people are actually listening to this. Of course, I think the median age of the folks that were there was about 65, so I brought the average down a little. But I mean, they were eating it up with a spoon. I'm like, this is just the same stuff that all of the politicians say, and y'all actually believe this?
Yeah, and I've actually seen Cruz do some man on the street kind of debates, and he seems pretty open to having people be able to finish their thought and actually engage with him. And I do give him a little bit of credit for that. But he's still a politician. But right. I think he makes more sense than most. But the bar is very, very low.
Yeah. Well, I would agree with that, because I've seen interviews where he's just talked to people one-on-one. And so I was really expecting a little bit more from this campaign stop. And it was just, he was just repeating talking points. Now we had a question and answer session. And so I asked him a question related to foreign policy, and specifically about, what does success look like in Afghanistan, and why are we in Yemen? And his talking point for Yemen, of course, he tried to say that he was a libertarian when it comes to foreign policy. And I found that pretty laughable. But he also said in Yemen, because it was a proxy war with Iran. And it's just, you only get a chance to ask one question. You don't get to kind of go back and forth with him. So at the end of it, I gave him a copy of Scott Horton's book, Fool's Errand. So that was kind of fun.
Yeah, something he'll probably never read, but should.
No, maybe a staffer will read it. I don't know.
Yeah. And I don't mean to go into Cruz territory too much here, but you mentioned Beto, who lost to Cruz. So how come he's some hot Democrat presidential candidate at this point? It seems really bizarre. And he seems like such a beta loser dude. I don't know what the appeal is.
Yeah, I mean, he lost to Ted Cruz, and they spent they spent twice what Ted Cruz spent, and he still lost to Ted Cruz. And it's if he can't beat Ted Cruz, how in the world is he going to beat Trump? I mean, Trump will tear him up, because his debate style is so not politician-like, and the politicians don't know how to come back when somebody says you're ugly.
Right, and by the time the election rolls around, there'll only be 11 years left of humanity, civilization. So Beto's going to be in trouble.
That's right. That's right.
All right. So earlier we talked about like legality and lawfulness and morality, and we see John Cho, the Roldy. He's very much that's illegal. That's against the law. I'm not going to do that. And we see that when they're paying the toll. We see that when he's going to cross the street outside of the gas station and all of those things. And we see him kind of come full circle by the end, where he sort of finds himself. And we see a similar journey with Kumar actually realizing that he has all these gifts and he should really apply them and do something good in the world. So I just want to kind of take this at this is a coming of age story that's very powerful, and I'm trying really hard to shoehorn this in, but it's about empowerment and making yourself better. It's a self-improvement story. There's a big hero's journey in this movie.
This comedy actually does have something of a plot. It seems like you could almost miss it, but it's there. And you're right, Daniel. It is a coming of age style self-realization finale where all the characters finally get what they want and do the thing. Like Harold finally has the courage to talk to the girl. Kumar, what does he do? I don't know if he does anything, does he? I mean, you say he does save that one person on the operating table.
Yeah, amazingly, like beautifully. And Deadpool's all like into him about that.
Did you have an issue with that though? I mean, aren't they committing fraud at that point?
Well, they aren't licensed, but do you really need to be? I mean,
someone comes up to you and calls you a doctor and says, "We need you in the OR. We've got a multiple gunshot wound victim here." At some point, are you going to go, "Yeah, maybe I'm not a doctor"?
Well, Cho's like, no, like I'm not a doctor, but Kumar knows what he's doing. He's got the skills, so he has the ability and knowledge to do it, and he's not afraid to do it. I admire that.
You admire it.
I admire Kumar's abilities and his his courage to do it. Yeah, he saved that.
And if that was your wife on there, laying there on the slab with multiple gunshot wounds, and they go, "Oh crap, that guy's not a real doctor," you'd be like, "Yeah, I'm sure he knows what he's."
Well, that's not the situation though. They don't know that. Nobody knows that, and Kumar knows that he knows what he's doing, and no one else knows that he's not a doctor. So there is none of this, reveal, right? And oddly enough, my wife will soon be on the slab. She's going to have a surgery in a couple of weeks. Not for gunshots.
That you know about.
Or will she? No, just kidding. Just kidding. So it sounds all premeditated at this point. Yeah, so Robert, it sounds like you are all about this medical licensure program that the state imposes, where they cut down half of the medical schools in the country so that they can drive up the wage rates of doctors and limit the supply and quality of healthcare in this country.
Well, as the podcast's resident status, yes, of course I am. No, Daniel, this is about fraud. This is not about licensure. This is about somebody purporting to be someone they're not. And when you are when Deadpool comes up and is like, "Dr. Kumar, we need you in the OR," and he's like, "You know where I got this? I see this as an opportunity to maybe score some weed." I think he's going in it with the wrong intentions, and he's committing fraud.
So
yeah, I got a problem with it.
You don't even like this character.
Now, if he had a little clinic where he was like Kumar's clinic, and I'll beat anybody else's prices by 50%, and yet I'm still a really good guy, really good doctor, but I don't have a PhD after my name, I'd be like, all for it. Fantastic. As long as the customer knows who you are and you're telling the truth and you're upfront about yourself and your abilities, fantastic.
So,
am I taking crazy pills here? I feel like this is a perfectly reasonable position to have.
Well, I mean, you can't know everything all at once. And so it's really impossible to be able to fulfill your fantasy of this fully informed consent situation, especially when there's a gunshot wound victim on the slab in this stoner movie, Robert.
Okay, so you're seeing Kumar as a hero here.
He saves that man's life, yes. He's a hero.
And what if he had killed him?
Well, then he's not a hero.
Okay, and you're going to hold him perfectly responsible for his killing of the guy, right?
No, the guy who shot him would be responsible for killing the guy.
So Kumar has no responsibility as a fake doctor who kills a guy by impersonating a real doctor.
Well, see, we're getting to some gray area. We're going to need to mitigate this with our guest, Rachel. What are your thoughts on this impasse?
I'm just here to talk about a stoner movie.
We get real. This is serious shit, Rachel.
We're going to burn this mother down, Pookie.
Did you notice in the beginning when there's a party and it's going, this like let's get it started song, except this time it said let's get retarded.
Yeah, isn't that the line? I thought that was the line.
I always knew it was let's get it started.
Well, I mean, there's multiple verses in a song, and they're rhymey, right? So I think it's let's get it started in here, let's get retarded in here, or whatever. Like,
you think so?
I think they probably.
I think the let's get it started was the radio edit, and let's get it retarded was like the club edit.
That could be. I don't know. We'll have to go to like the lyricsmachine.com, or I just made that up. That might be not even a thing. I know there used to be like a bunch of lyrics sites, like you'd look for song lyrics and you'd get like 50 results. They'd all have like weird URLs and whatnot, trying to sell you spam.
We don't have a resident Black Eyed Peas expert in the room.
Retarded is
that
the original,
the band?
Anarchist Mom. It is Black Eyed Peas, is that correct?
I know they sing something called Let's Get It Started, but I don't know if it's the same song or not.
Well,
this is not important enough to waste this much time talking about it.
We've already wasted so much time, and Robert's a business hippie. He understands supply and demand.
I wrote that down too.
Me too.
Must have been a very important part.
No, it is. This is where we can shoehorn in some economics. Because Kumar thinks that this guy's just some dumb socialist hippie who's going to give him weed for cheap, like $40. And then the business hippie is like, well, it's going to be like $80 because of how desperate you are, Kumar. And I thought that was well portrayed. Like very limited supply. There was nowhere else he could get it on campus. And, as we know, in a situation like a hurricane where, bottles of water are going for a mint, the higher the price they are, the more incentivized people are to bring more to that area and relieve the situation. But the government...
And this weed dealer is taking a huge risk to bring this weed into this location. As we see in the film, there are these psychotic security guys who chase after anybody they think is smoking or has any. So this guy's a hero.
He's much like those grocery stores in Texas that sell the CBD oil.
Pretty much anywhere. I think you can get it in gas stations too.
And
so this is a situation where the laws are creating artificial scarcity, and not just anybody's willing to take the risk to bring this weed in. So even though Kumar grumbles about it, he ultimately does pay up. So he ultimately feels like he's getting his money's worth based on the situation.
Yeah. He would have preferred to spend less, but I mean, everything I'd buy, I'd prefer to have spent less, but I'm willing to exchange that amount of money for the thing because I desire the thing more than the money, and vice versa. It's a mutually beneficial trade. We're both better off as the result of the trade.
Absolutely. But what happens is, doesn't he end up like getting away with the weed bag? Or is that later in the film?
That's later.
Later in the film, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, he actually drops his $80 worth of weed down the toilet.
Oh, that's right.
Right during the battle shits?
Yes.
You skag. You sank my destroyer.
I don't know about y'all, but they use way too much toilet paper.
I can't. I don't know if I can comment on that. I don't remember.
How wasteful! How wasteful!
Well, it's not theirs. So battle or the
tragedy of the commons.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. Yeah, if it doesn't cost them anything, at least directly for the amount they're using, they're going to use more than they otherwise would have. Similar to if there was universal health care. Seriously,
indeed,
it's like the toilet paper in taco shits here. If you're not paying for it, you're going to use a heck of a lot more of it. The demand will go through the roof, and you'll use it for things that you wouldn't otherwise need it for, and all this unnecessary stuff will happen.
Right. You remove the cost, and all of a sudden, something you would otherwise go, is it really worth it? No. You're going, well, why not? Let's go get it checked out.
It's an all-you-can-eat buffet. Toilet paper buffet.
Toilet paper for everybody until it runs out. And then everybody, then things are not so good.
Run out. And we're going to need another Green New Deal for recycled toilet paper or something. My wife and I, we used to watch this show called Cheapskates, I think is what it was called. And it's about people who go to extreme lengths to save money. So like one of the guys used like an onion bag as a scrubber for his dishes. And another lady wore the same pair of shorts every day for years, even after they fell apart. And she was like tying them on with a rope. And the coup de grace was the family who had a family cloth. Instead of toilet paper, they had a cloth next to the toilet, and then they would launder this cloth, or they'd have a stack of them or whatever, but they would launder them and then reuse them. I mean, it's very similar to like cloth diapering, right? In a way.
Mm-hmm.
But still nasty. And toilet paper's cheap. I mean, come on. I mean, it's not like we're in Venezuela here.
For now, it's cheap.
Yeah. So, Robert, I want to go back to those psycho rent-a-cop, wannabe cop guys. Was it Princeton? Is that the school?
Yeah.
And
they're in Jersey, as I recall.
Right. And they're chasing the guys, and they don't even see them, and yet somehow they know who they are. It's kind of bizarre. But when they do catch the business hippie, the one guy is like, hold his throat and groin. Come on, rookie.
Yeah.
Like, you're not torturing him properly.
Yeah, even though I don't think that these campus cops, they're on a kind of a different level than regular cops. I don't think they get quite the training to dominate like regular cops do. So I think they were a bit misattributing cop tactics on campus cops. Although campus cops do some crappy shit too. It's true, but I don't know if they're as insane as these guys are.
Yeah, no,
but
the cops
are.
In the jail in the town are even worse.
Yeah.
And I was surprised at how openly derisive of police they were in this movie. And I get it. I mean, this is back when the left, and I envision this as very left-leaning people made this movie. But back then it was more like out of the bedroom and civil liberties kind of a thing, libertinism a little bit. But also, I mean, they are a little bit calling out like racial profiling and police brutality. I mean, especially with the black professor in there reading civil disobedience.
Mm-hmm.
Like, oh, he's resisting. He's got a gun. It's a book. And, they're like basically torturing the guy. And then this is where Kumar finds that bag of weed, right? Because the business hippie got arrested and then his mom bailed him out.
Right.
Another example of how the war on drugs impacts minorities and poor people.
Like, yeah, much more than somebody who's more affluent, right? Because they can get bailed out or whatever, not have to spend the time in jail. But where I was also going with this is back to the racial profiling thing, is in order to gain access to spring Roldy from the jail, Kumar calls in a false report of gunshots. And all of the cops are like, yeehaw, strap up, let's go and get us some shooting, And so that leaves the police station empty, and he can go in and spring Roldy and get the weed. But the guys come back in, and they have apprehended some guy from his bed who was sleeping as the suspect for this false report of a shooting because he's black.
Yeah, I mean, I'm having flashbacks to kind of like Black Lives Matter type stuff. I got the joke, but it was so cartoonish that it got a bit of an eye roll from me. I mean, even I recognize that, cops don't necessarily just go out and seek out and try to kill black people. They're not just like out hunting them. Blacks do generally commit, a majority of the violent crimes. So, or at least proportional to their population size. So it's not necessarily that all cops are like horrific racists, but you have a lot of these laws, especially the war on drugs and that sort of things, which put people in these situations where cops are having to interact with, peaceful people.
Well, not even having to, but like doing it, I'm just, the word having to is almost like they should be doing it,
Well, incentivizing.
Yeah.
I mean, they pick and choose what laws to enforce, right? I mean, there are murders on the books that go uninvestigated.
Yeah,
or at least
over half of violent crimes aren't even reported to the police.
The police officer that I spoke to, the retired NYPD police officer, he ended up kind of seeing the light and transferring off the undercover narcotics division, and he transferred over to I think he called it special crimes. It's kind of like the special victims unit, and he was stunned because in this narcotics division that he had transferred out of, there were 1,000 officers, and then he transferred over to this, and they're arresting people for not necessarily, I mean, they're nonviolent crimes. The bulk of the people they're arresting on these narcotics, on the narcotic side. So he transfers over to civil special crimes, where he's investigating child abuse and rape, like crimes with true victims. And there were 22 officers in that division versus 1,000 over in narcotics.
Yeah, you definitely see where the money is in that situation. Well, let's lighten the mood a little bit and talk about Jamie Kennedy's cameo, where he's the close peer. What are you, the king of the forest? Tree hugger?
Is that
who's Jamie Kennedy?
That was Jamie Kennedy. And
Who was Jamie Kennedy? You're not answering my question.
Jamie Kennedy was apparently popular in the mid-2000s. I think he had a television show similar to like a pranking show. Is that right?
Something like that.
I think a lot of people confuse him with Seth Green or Tom Green. I think they're all kind of mixed up together in a blender, like that song from the 90s.
Oh, okay. You're talking about the MTV show, Jamie Kennedy Experiment or something?
Yes. That's it.
Okay. And that was him.
Yeah,
The
that
close
was like
peer.
that was like a hidden camera show, right?
I don't know.
No,
A long time ago, Daniel.
well, our memories are failing us very poorly, very badly here.
Okay,
I didn't
so
even realize that was him.
let's talk about what do you got on this close peer situation, Daniel? I know you want to talk about this. This is an important topic. Bring it.
Well, so it just kind of ties into the movie in general. Like it starts out relatively straightforward and based in somewhat level of reality, but then it gets further and further and further out until the end. You know, you kind of are in this mystical Mario saving the princess as Zorro with mushroom pizza people or something. But this is one of those steps towards making it more weird, and that is this close peer situation where Kumar needs to pee on a bush, and then this random guy shows up and pees right next to him and like stares at him. And it reminds me of that meme where there's like a whole bunch of urinals, and they always say it's like someone's got to like tell you something like that's just totally stupid, like, oh, by the way, I've never seen Game of Thrones, or by the way, I'm vegan or keto or something like that, or gluten free. And so they get up right next to you, and there's like 50 other urinals they could have gone to. Anyway, it was just one step further along into getting like a weirder and weirder movie. And NPH showing up being the ladies' man, coked out, tripping balls guy. And Rachel and I chatted about this prior to the show. This was before he had made his announcement of coming out as a gay man. And so this role also led him into being Barney in that show, How I Met Your Mother, where he has a similar ladies' man vibe. But I think when this came out, like, it was not far-fetched to think that he was somewhat like that in a way, even though he said in an interview, and they actually bill him in the credits, not as Neil Patrick Harris playing himself, but Neil Patrick Harris playing Neil Patrick Harris as a character, because he wanted it to be clear that he's not behaving as he would normally behave. So he's playing a character in the movie.
Yeah, fair enough. The randomness of some of the weird shit that happens in this film is what sort of ruins it for me. I suppose if you're high and you're watching this, fine, and then this thing happens, and then this thing happens. But the random nature of just, I love random nature crap. Like if it's in a movie like Airplane and just random crap happens and it's funny, fine. But for some reason in this film, it just seemed kind of strange. Like, which is fine. You're doing it for laughs, and if it gets a laugh out of you, all more power to you. But it seemed like the strange journey trip that they were going on, it didn't really seem. I mean, is there a scene in this film when they get like really stoned, except for at the very beginning?
Yeah, mostly the very beginning, and then after they score a little bit at the campus, and I think,
and then the cheetah
with the cheetah, yeah, smoking with the cheetah. But it is like this escalation of it getting weirder and weirder. Like we've got Freak Show, who's played by one of the guys from, I think, Special Victims Unit, right?
Christopher Maloney. I don't know if that's how you say his name.
Yeah, and I was really surprised because when I first saw this movie, years ago, I had no idea that was him. And then in rewatching it, I thought, well, that's that guy? That's so crazy. Because I don't see him as that, like being able to do that kind of a character. I thought it was like a Chris Elliott type, in a way. Not that he looks... Anyway, but that was like one weird escalation, right? Like this super weird dude who's like so over the top pro Jesus.
Has a smoking hot wife.
With the smoking hot wife, and he's like, he says they can, fuck his wife, and she even says it, and then he's like very menacingly when he comes back in, he seems to have forgotten that he told him that. But it was just another thing that made it really weird. And one other note I saw about this is when they're walking through the guy's yard and there's all those dogs in the kennel. Apparently, John Cho didn't know there was a German Shepherd in the kennel next to him, and so when he walked by and the dog started barking really loudly, he didn't expect it, and so he really did like jump or get startled, and it's like a real reaction in the movie.
Nice.
Oh, and another thing I read is that
Daniel.
Kumar is played by Kal Penn, and Kal Penn is a vegetarian. So two things about that. Well, he's vegetarian and he has nut allergy. So the vegetarian aspect is the sliders that they eat at the end, they're hamburgers. They made veggie burgers for him. And then in the police scene where he's in the air conditioning duct and then falls through, the first time they shot that, they had to create dust. And so they used walnuts, crunched up walnuts to make dust. He had a reaction to that and had to go to the hospital. So they had to reshoot it using chocolate dust.
Interesting. You did a lot more homework on this than I did.
Well, I was trying to sound informed on such a prestigious film that has so much to tell us.
Is there a website for that?
Oh, well, we're going to have a show notes page at lastnighters.com/75 is where we're going to have that. We're actually getting pretty long already, and I know we've kind of been meandering as I have not led the discussion very well. But Rachel, why don't we go through a couple of your notes, and then Robert's, and then we'll wind this down.
Well, I guess one of the things that I had written down is the fact where they're in that the convenience store and the extreme guys are basically tearing the place up, and they're afraid to call the cops to stop the guys from vandalizing the store, basically.
I wondered that too. Like, why didn't the owner call the cops or do anything really other than just kind of sit there and be helpless against these guys?
I mean, I don't know much about the people in the Northeast, but surely they don't just stand there. I know in Texas they wouldn't just stand there while somebody tore their store up.
No, that's his livelihood right there. Why would you just stand there? I don't know if and there's very famous stories of Koreans on rooftops. I mean, this guy,
Yeah, well, I think Texas would be a lot different than New Jersey. Like in New Jersey, you can't even pump your own gas. So that was another thing in this movie that was a little bit inaccurate because they actually shot the film in Canada. But the gas station says self-serve, and you can't do that in New Jersey or Oregon. I think those are the only two states. And Oregon just started relaxing on that a little bit, I think.
Yeah, weren't there people complaining that they were going to have to pump their own gas now or something? I mean, I remember like maybe a year or so ago seeing something about that. I'm like, really? I've been pumping my gas since I was 16.
Well, the counter arguments to that are that there's going to be a whole lot of accidents because people are too stupid to pump their own gas, and they're just going to drive away with the thing in the car, and they're going to cause explosions and whatnots.
I have seen that happen.
Was
not the explosion.
I'm sorry, what?
I said I have seen that happen where people drive off with the nozzle in their car.
Well, it does happen from time to time, but the idea that that's going to be a real huge problem is somewhat ridiculous. But then the other argument was, well, then what are these attendants going to do for work? What about them?
Well, that was the reason that the laws were put in place that you required to not do self-service, because think of all my gerbs, saving all my gerbs over there.
And it's an admission that, the market prefers cheaper gas and that the law is actually in place is harming the consumer.
Yeah, and in a way, it's showing other states that they can charge more in gas taxes because, well, you can still charge this much in Oregon and Texas or New Jersey, and people are buying gas. So we can throw on some more road taxes on there.
Can we talk about real quick about one of my pet peeves?
I'd love to talk about one of your pet peeves, but I'm right here, Robert.
So at one point in this movie, Kumar thinks, a raccoon bites him, and he's got like blood all over his whatever, or his shirt. And he's like, I might have rabies. We need to go to the hospital. And okay, fine. So they go to the hospital, and, Kumar's waiting for like a few minutes, and then he comes out and he's like, I don't have rabies. That is not how that works. As a hypochondriac who has an irrational fear of getting rabies, I know it's like 1 in a million or 1 in like 300 million, whatever. Don't come at me. It's fine. I know it's completely irrational. What you do in the case where you suspect a rabies situation is you keep the animal that bit you, and they cut off its head and they send it to a lab, and then they can test to see if the rabies vaccine, the virus is in the animal's brain. That's how you can tell. You can't just go to a hospital and there's some magical test that can tell you in 5 minutes that you don't have it. That's not how that works. Movie, you're liar. Okay, that's all I got.
Well, and if you don't have the animal and you suspect it has rabies, then the person who got bitten has to take all the shots.
Yeah.
If they can't get the animal to send its head off. I used to work for a vet clinic in my formative years as a teenager, and we cut off several heads and mailed them to College Station.
Right.
For testing.
Yeah, if you suspect it, you got to get a whole bunch of shots. It's not something that you just know.
But
anyway, I know it's a comedy, but I don't want people to get their misconceptions about rabies because it will kill you if you develop symptoms, but it's super, super rare.
Well, now I'm really glad that our dog has received her rabies vaccination because, and she has a little tag that says she's had it, because I couldn't. She likes to bite, right? She likes to nip people. She's got healer in her, and she likes to shepherd people around, herd them around. And I've got some scratches and whatnot from her sharp little teeth. But yeah, if somebody were to get bit by her, I mean, yeah, it would be unfortunate, but I wouldn't want them cutting her head off to see if she's got rabies.
Well, they'll quarantine them for 10 days if you have a dog bite. They'll quarantine the dog. Now puppies are different, but like they'll quarantine a dog for 10 days, and then if they don't show any signs of rabies, then they don't have to cut their head off.
Okay, all right. I'm not.
And as a human, the incubation period for rabies is, I think, like 6. You do have time. I could be wrong on that. I'm not an expert, of course. Look into it yourself. But
all right. So
anyway.
Robert just covered himself, so he's not a liar. He's not sure.
I could just be wrong about things, Daniel. I'm like Kumar, except I tell the truth about stuff.
You're extreme. You're extreme truthing.
Who gets in a kayak and throws them down an aisle and calls it extreme kayak? Douchebags.
Jacked up douchebags on Monster Energy drink with jacked up truck. Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
Well, what were y'all's thoughts on Harold and Kumar stealing their car?
Yeah, I was not a fan of that. 2 wrongs don't make it right.
Yeah, I mean, it was some kind of like standing up to them would have been appropriate, but yeah, stealing their car, not so much. And Neil Patrick Harris and PH stealing their car, also inappropriate. And even though he offers to buy them a meal and he says, well, that's why I'm buying you a meal, dicks. I don't think that excuses it. You know what I mean? Like, I'd still be rather upset, especially with the love stick in the back when he.
Yeah, but who leaves keys in the car when you got like some stoned out party person in the back seat? I don't know. It just seems irresponsible.
Yeah, and I really enjoyed the drive-by scene where he's out the sunroof with the women and he's like doing the coke off the hooker's butt. I know that's not appropriate, but it's hilarious. It's a comedy film.
Well, it makes it more funny that he came out a couple years after that.
Yeah, Robert, you cut that earlier, right? Like, so this movie came out in 2004, and when did he announce? Like 3 years later, maybe 2007?
I think you told me 2006.
Okay, yeah, just a couple years later then. All right. What else do we have in your notes here?
Well, I've got the sketch artists at the end.
Yes. Bullets, my only weakness. How did you know? Yes, the sketch artist is hilarious.
I must have missed that.
It's when the credits are rolling and they're talking about like the news report of the police are looking for 2 individuals and they think they have a very accurate description of them. And it's like a cartoon caricature of like a
Chinaman and like a Muslim guy.
Yeah,
a Hindu guy.
Full on
with the
turban style and like rice patty hat, you know, like the old what were they, Warner Brothers cartoons where they were, you know, mischaracterizing like Japanese people when they were the quote unquote enemy. World War II style.
Yeah. Something that if you did it today would be horribly racist.
Right. But because, you know, they're who they are and this was made at the time it was made. Like I said earlier, I don't think that this movie could get made today. Where, you know, back then they were like pushing the boundaries in so many areas. And it seemed like that's what the left was trying to do. And in a way, they're still doing that now, but in a very specific way. It's like you have to accept me being gender confused or whatever, but you can't talk about it or say the wrong pronoun. Otherwise, I'll get really upset. Like, it's a really weird situation.
Yeah. I mean, this is a time when they're obviously making a comedy film and they're the butt of the joke, or they're kind of self-referencing tropes and stereotypes and that sort of thing. But yeah, I just don't see this movie getting made today. I tend to agree with you, Daniel.
When did
this movie inspired a chain, right? There's like 3 of these?
Yes. Yeah, they escaped from Guantanamo in the second one. And it's funny because I think we mentioned that in the pre-show, how Obama had said he was going to shut it down and he never did. But they actually have George Bush, a character version of George Bush in this Guantanamo one. And he's actually like a cool guy in it. They smoke weed with him in Texas. Anyway.
Yeah, I find that offensive.
Robert, what do you think of their speech at the end when they're about to go down on the hang glider to their goal, you know, the thing they've been striving for this whole time, where Kumar's talking about their families came there escaping persecution, poverty, and hunger to live in a land where you could have hundreds of different types of burgers or types of deodorant. America, you know, the pursuit of happiness and the American dream, that whole speech. I thought that was actually kind of, you know, I mean, it's a little patriotic, but it also highlights the difference between sort of the more socialist economies like a Bernie Sanders would want, where there should be only one type of deodorant. I mean, he literally says they can have hundreds of different types of burgers here.
Right. No, I thought the speech was, like you said, almost exactly like you said, and I put it in my notes as he makes an immigrant in search of freedom speech, because it's a recognition that people move towards economic opportunity and freedom. Right. And that's what you get when you have a free market, or we would if we really did have a free market. We should have a vestige market. And it allows you for multiple competing people to produce different products and for the market to choose the best one. and for people to voluntarily hand over their dollars for the ones they prefer. And then those rise to the top, and, the ones that fail sink down. But in a socialist kind of situation or a communist situation, you'd have one choice and that's it. And that one choice is regardless of whether or not you like it. I mean, they'll just keep producing, like, regardless of, you whether, there's all done by like quotas and like some kind of government manager who dictates that, this is how many pounds of cheese we need to create or whatever. Whereas, the consumer is the ultimate decider in a free market. So I liked it. I liked the speech a lot. More in terms of what I gleaned from it than probably the actual text.
Right. Yeah. It's sort of like our interpretation of it, our reading of it, I would think.
Yeah. But yeah, people keep moving from, horribly economically oppressive countries into relatively economically free places.
We even see that in within the United States. Like, people are moving from certain states to other states. Like in the pre-show, Rachel, you talked about if you were a user of cannabis, you would probably look at moving to Oklahoma. And my wife and I were looking at Idaho or other places like that due to the homeschool laws. And you even see these migrations from these high tax, high regulation states to other states such as Texas or Colorado, people moving from New York, New Jersey, and California to these other places to escape those regulations and high taxes. Meanwhile, they introduce those ideas that they're trying to escape into the local, political arena. And those states become more and more like those oppressive states that they left. It's like a really unfortunate situation. It's like they don't put two and two together. Like, the reason we moved here is to get away from this crap. But this place doesn't have that crap, and we kind of like some of that crap. So now we're going to have more of that crap.
Yeah, they just don't recognize that what causes, like, the cause and effect situation of these policies. It's ridiculous. They're like children.
Yeah, there was a lady in Austin, Texas, which it's pretty expensive. Austin's the more liberal part of Texas, state capital. And there was a lady in Austin, and she was complaining that her property taxes were really expensive. And she said, I just don't understand why my taxes are so expensive. Every time they put something on the ballot for a park or public works, I voted in favor of it. And my taxes are so high, I don't understand.
It's a mystery.
It's like, where do you think that money comes from, lady? And so the people that move from these high tax states and they come to Texas, they turn around and they vote to implement all these things that increase their taxes. And it's like, you just left the state that the taxes were too high, and now you're going to come here and vote for the same exact policies that made the cost of living so high in the state that you came from.
Yeah, but progressivism is a religion. It's not like a
until they had to pay for it.
Well, it's the other guy who pays for it, right? In their mind.
Yeah.
It's the rich, those bastards. They got to pay their fair share anyway.
Right. And nobody realizes that they are, in a relative sense to the rest of the world, you are the rich. If you're in the United States and you make more than, $35,000, you are the 1%.
It's true. How are we doing on time, Daniel? It seems like we're winding this thing up.
Yeah, we should be. We should be, because we are already over time. So we can do what we do is the final summaries and reviews. If Robert, you want to kick it off, and then we will go to our guest, Rachel, and then I'll close it out.
Yeah, so this is a comedy from 2004, and it surprised me by how many times it made me laugh. I wasn't expecting it to make me laugh. Usually I'm just stone-faced at these old comedies, because usually comedies do not age well at all. But this one actually made me laugh. 3 good laugh out louds moments. And so, that gets points for that, for sure.
All right, don't leave us in suspense. What were the moments?
Okay, bullets, my only weakness, shotgun anus, and calling the weed bag a filthy whore. That was a cute little thing. When they did the little weed bag montage, the way it went dark at the end, that was fucking brilliant. I loved that. Because usually you have these little montages where everything's just happy times. But for some reason, they decided to take it to a dark place at the end where he's like, they resent each other, and he's like, yeah, this is great. Funny. Go make me a sandwich.
It's amazing how they can make domestic violence like funny, and somehow they pull it off. It is amazing. This film is amazing. Continue, Robert.
Yeah. So I appreciated the the things it gave us to talk about. It's not the deepest film, but it wasn't trying to be. It was just trying to have a good time and make you laugh. And I think it succeeded for the most part. In a comedy, they can get away with having a bunch of random elements. If this was a drama, there's a bunch of times and then a cheetah pops up. I mean, I know they set it up in the little radio in the police station, I heard that. It still doesn't forgive the fact that they're riding a cheetah like 10 minutes later. But fine, it is what it is. It's fine. It's comedy. So you get to hand wave all kinds of, normal criticism and just say, hey, did you have a good time? Did you laugh? Yeah. Well, then it's set out to do what it wants. And it obviously did. And this movie made money, and they made a couple more of these, and more power to them. The acting, it's not blowing your doors off, but it's fine. These are, some decently talented people that got together and made this. So that's fun. I'm going to give it a 7, straight 7, solid 7. It's not great, but maybe that's too high of a score. I don't care. It's fine. Daniel, what did you think?
All right, that was a hit, Robert. You sunk my battle shit. I enjoyed this film, and I laughed more than 3 times. I laughed like a freaking idiot watching this, and I think it was just because it was so ridiculous, and it kept escalating the ridiculousness. And in a way, yeah, it was disjointed, but it's also a comedy and a stoner film, and so the further they can take it and the crazier they can make it, I think I have to give it a pass on that. And at the end of the day, it's a story about 2 guys who find themselves, and they can only be satisfied by achieving the desire that they have, the goal they have in mind, and all the harrowing stuff that happens in between makes them desire it even more. So in a way, it shows you how going through the trial by fire actually improves you as a person, having to face struggles and overcome them. This is an empowering movie. And it's a weird way to look at it, because it is, a stupid stoner movie. But at the end, they're better people for it. And I got to give it props for that. And because it's like such a stoner movie, I'm going to go with a 4.2. But because there's 2 of the guys, and I like both of them, I'm going to go with 8.4 total. So they both get a 420 or 4.20, so 8.40. It's a weird score, but we're only supposed to go a decimal point deep. I went, 1 more. Rachel, your thoughts?
It wasn't as terrible as I thought it would be. I don't usually watch stoner films, which I guess is ironic. But, it was actually pretty funny. It was funny. I actually now want to watch some of the other ones just to see, can they top riding a cheetah or Neil Patrick Harris doing drugs off a hooker's hind parts. So, yeah, I would probably go with Robert and stay about a 7, because I wouldn't recommend it to a friend, but I think I would go out and watch it, the other ones, just to see what they're like.
All right. So maybe it's like a bit of a guilty pleasure now that you've kind of been exposed to it. You're like, oh, I'm kind of curious. It was kind of fun.
Yeah, I think so. I think so.
But not so much you'd want your friends and family to know you're watching it, even though you're now on this public and very popular show talking about how you've seen this movie.
Yes, I would think. I'm not like embarrassed that I watch it, but I'm not going to go out and tell everybody I watched it. If they ask me, did you watch it? I'll say, yeah, I watched that, because Daniel didn't want to spend $15 on a movie.
Yes, I'm the bad guy. Make me the bad guy. Extreme.
Oh, one thing I thought that was hilarious is the Extreme guys had all those lame 90s songs like Wilson Phillips and stuff like that. I thought that was pretty funny.
Oh, yeah, when they were playing it and they're like, these guys are posers.
Yeah, but I like Wilson Phillips. I like that song. I'm a loser too, so.
Well, just hold on.
That's right.
And if you could stick around, we'd love to have you on for our Kathleen Turner Overdrive, which is available for our Patreon supporters. So people can find that at lastnighters.com/Patreon. And they can find your show at cannabishealsme.com. And what was your next one that's coming out? Who's the guest on that one?
Well, my guest on next Friday is going to be John Beza. He is a former NYPD undercover narcotics officer. So we're going to talk to him about the failure of the drug war that he saw up close and personal. And then on Monday's show on our healing story, we're going to talk to a lady about how she used cannabis to put her Graves' disease in remission, which is a form of thyroid disease.
All right. That sounds good. And I want to thank you for being a fantastic guest with us tonight, talking about this show or this movie, which, like we said in the open, it's like, does this movie help or hurt when it comes to the perception of cannabis and what medical benefits there are? So I'm glad that there's someone like you out there publicizing those healing stories, and then also doing your Thursday stuff where you're kind of investigating more of the downstream effects of the government interventions that are related to it. Robert, any comments before we talk about the next movie we're going to do next week?
Yeah, I just want to thank Rachel for coming on. It's great having her. Next week, I will be back on video. I'll be on the west side of the mountains. I'm driving back tomorrow. So for those of you who were upset that you only heard my sweet voice, ugly mug, back on the next week, starting with what movie, Daniel?
We're going to do for Father's Day, Legends of the Fall with the professional asshole who we have not had on in quite a while. And apparently, and I haven't seen this movie in a long time, but apparently there's a lot of libertarian leanings in the father character played by Anthony Hopkins in this movie. So I'm actually really excited to watch this one and see what we can parse out of it next week with the professional asshole.
Yeah, I remember that movie fairly well. I remember seeing it not too long ago, and I think he's absolutely right. The Anthony Hopkins character. I think the movie is set at a time when the United States is at war, and the Brad Pitt character and has there's a bunch of brothers, and they're deciding whether or not they're going to go to the war. And Hopkins is just like, "Don't go, you idiots," as I recall. So yeah, it'll be a good one.
Yeah, I agree. I'm really looking forward to it, and it'll be a lot of fun. We haven't had him on in a while, and he's a good guy. So look forward to that. And everyone, this has been Last Nighters episode 75. So you can find the show notes more at lastnighters.com/75. We will have a link to Rachel's work on the page and other show notes related to what we talked about tonight as we rode a cheetah all the way to White Castle to get some sliders for their beefy goodness, even though Cal Penn's vegetarian. And we'll catch you guys next week for Legends of the Fall. Good night from last night.